This is the If More Let's Divide podcast.
Yo, Charlie guys, what's poppin'? Welcome to the If More Let's Divide podcast. After over 50 episodes, we have been consistent. And Charlie, you guys have been enabling us to churn out this dope podcast out of our own pockets. And forget about the pockets, the time, Charlie. And we thank you for supporting us through and through.
We're over 60 episodes, though.
Yeah. Okay. We thank you for supporting us through and through, Charlie. Fred, what did happen?
Brown, B. Brown liquor. That's what I walked in on. So I did, bro.
Yeah.
That's good.
And our guest influenced us to be alcoholics.
Influence runs through the DNA.
Yeah. The last time someone did this was Josephine T.
Yeah.
Ken was like, "Where's the beer? Bring the beer." But this guest was like, "Oh,
Bring the real shit.
bring the strong one." Please, I'm joking. No, we just wanted to have some fluids on sets.
Yeah.
To help us, go through this episode. Chai Fred, who do we have?
Man, Charlie. Legacies, they transcend time.
Yeah.
They're people who, just by sheer virtue of their bloodline,
Yeah.
they command the presence. But this person has gone beyond that. I mean, obviously, she's her own person.
Doing amazing
crazy
stuff,
shit.
Charlie.
I believe you make you list the things because I don't want to miss anything.
Charlie, she doubles, theater. She's an actress. And so many things in between. Apparently, when she's on set, she multitasks. Like, she did do a costume, then she did, she did paint. Many people don't know this, but Charlie.
Wow.
Yeah, she did paint, and Charlie.
Let's find out if
We are going to uncover.
You can get some.
Yeah, Charlie.
the
So,
low.
guys, without further ado, help us welcome Princess Nkrumah. Princess Nkrumah.
Hello.
I like the way you said hello.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should I say it again?
Yes, please.
Hello.
Yes. I like, Fred too speaks sometimes. When he's tipsy, he enters the American zone and slurs like he doesn't care.
I mean,
Yeah. Now, Princess, we thank you for coming to grace, this episode, coming to hold, the mantle
Oh.
for
Thank
us, on this episode. We thank you for honoring our invitation.
Thank you so much for having me. Also, as far as honoring your invitation, I don't see how I could have not done so.
Aish, please, so we know you, the way we know you, the way we hold you in high esteem.
Hey.
I'm like, is she going to come?
Of
Is she not going to
course.
come? But yeah, you were actually on my mind a long time ago, and we had Pascal Aka.
Oh, we love Pascal.
Yeah.
We love Pascal.
And he mentioned you. I'm like, oh, I have your
Did
name
he?
down. Like, I've had your name down for a long time,
Pascal is great.
Yeah, shout outs to Pascal. How is life?
Ooh, life is lifing. We're out here in Accra.
Yeah.
We all know what's going on right now, but I think everyone is at that place where they understand that nobody's going to do anything for them. So instead of waiting to be invited to tables, we're building our own tables. So that's where I'm at right now.
Wow. And where is this? Where do you get this from? With this vim from?
That's a good question.
Because you are speaking with so much confidence. Yeah.
Really?
I'm building my own table.
Hey.
Yeah.
Well, but the thing about building a table also that we need to remember is that you don't do it on your own. It's a collaborative effort. So when I say I'm building my own table, I'm not saying, oh, I have all the wood and I have all the tools.
Yeah.
I may have some wood and some tools, but I'm partnering with other people who have other parts and nuts and bolts and what have you, to come together and build a table that will be sustainable for not just those of us who are coming together, but other people who don't have a table.
Yeah. I've seen you at demonstrations before.
Hey.
Maybe
Not
maybe
the
one
protest.
maybe yes, protest, like, you know, maybe once. Is that part of you building, you know, your table? Like, is that, you know?
Oddly enough, no, I don't think so. I think growing up, my uncle, the late lawyer Kotan Pao, he was involved in a lot of student movement, activism, demonstrations. He was a part of the Kumi Preku demonstrations.
Oh, wow.
He was actually imprisoned for 22 months. For the first time for 6 months, and then for a second time for 22 months.
Why? Because of?
Well, because he was speaking up against the government at the time.
So who imprisoned? JJ Rollins?
Yes. Yeah.
Charlie, sorry, I'm sorry for mentioning his name because Fred is about to go in.
Oh no.
No, I mean, you can go in if you want to.
Just for speaking out.
For speaking out. And he wasn't the only one. It was himself, Edu Amankwa, Professor Karakari, and many others. And I think over the years, he's taught me to have a strong sense of self and sense of justice and morality, and to put the people first at all times.
Yeah. Yes, cool. So how do you translate it into the work that you do now?
With regards to filmmaking?
Yes.
Well,
is that your main hustle?
At the moment.
At
the moment. I also have an LLB. I'm hoping to become a lawyer soon enough.
Defend us.
I will try to.
Okay.
There are a lot of unsightly laws currently within our legal markup, and I think that we require people who understand the needs of the present generation to not only study the law, but position themselves in places where they can change the current laws. Because unfortunately, all of the decisions are being made for us by people who are not going to be here much longer, and who don't understand what our present needs or future needs are going to be.
Yeah. So how do you translate like you building your table to what you do now? How do you bring it? You know, how do you merge the two? Have you tried, or you haven't consciously tried?
I think even unconsciously, I'm always doing so. I noticed recently with a film that I was lucky enough to produce and star in, that a lot of the themes in the film, after we had finished making the film and were done with post-production, when I watched the film over, I said, oh, we're discussing some pretty sensitive present issues that are ongoing in the country and globally. And that wasn't our intention when we went into it. But I think that's the thing about being conscious of what your passion is and the things that you want to change in the world. No matter what you're doing, you will imbue that into your work, whether it's with songwriting or with art or your work as journalist or whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah, dope. Right.
Hey, how are you? How's the liquor going?
It's not liquor. It's
just a little concoction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nothing crazy.
All right.
It's not liquor. It's
some brown juice.
It's a squash.
Brown juice.
Some Coca-Cola.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. How did you walk into filmmaking?
Ooh, brilliant question. So growing up, I used to be very fascinated by theater and film. Really, any kind of performance, anything that seemed larger than life. But more so, I think, because no matter what I was going through at any point in my life, I would be able to watch a show or a film or any kind of media and recognize what it was that I was going through and know in that moment that it wasn't some unique tragedy that I was experiencing or some unique process that was only happening to me. Because as human beings, we get very, we get lost in our heads where we think, oh, we're the only people going through what we're going through now and nobody will ever understand me, especially when you're young.
Yeah.
Those teenage years or even younger. You think, oh, my friends will never know, how I feel. Nobody gets me. And then you watch a TV show, you watch a movie, and there's a character in there who feels the way that you do. Mm-hmm. And then more than that, you see them overcome whatever circumstance it is that to you feels like the end of your life in that moment in time. And I remember one day watching something and thinking, I want to do that for somebody. And more than that, also recognizing that there weren't a lot of people who looked like us. Like people that I knew, like people who were my family or my friends. And I recognized that, yes, I'm able to see myself in some of these characters and able to connect with their stories, and that gives me hope. But how much more hopeful would I be if the character that I was connecting with looked like me? How much more of an impact would it make if the characters that we were finding solace in looked like us and truly reflected us? And I think that was when I decided this is something I want to do properly.
Sounds like you didn't grow up here.
To a degree I did.
Okay.
To a degree I did. We used to travel a lot. I went to middle school here. It's funny. I did 1 year at St. Teresa's because my cousin Senna went to St. Teresa's. I did not like it there. I did
Why?
not. I found that I don't know. I felt, I don't want to say bullied, but I just felt a bit disconnected. But then I've always felt a little disconnected throughout school in general.
Really? Why?
I wonder if I would never want to blame my mothers. They were incredible. My mom and my aunt, because I called them both my mothers growing up. They both raised me. It's funny, my first day of first grade, I told the kids, oh, I have 2 moms. And they're like, you can't have 2 moms. I was like, yeah, I do. My birth mom, Mommy Annette, gave birth to my top half. And Mommy Tata, I used to call her Tanti, Princess Consolata, she gave birth to my bottom half. And the doctor stitched me together. And they're like, that's not true. I know. Listen. Yeah, because I needed to make sense of how they were both my mothers. And at that age, nobody was going around saying, this is your mother, this is not your mother. They were both my mothers. I called them both mommy. So I had to figure out how that would work.
Yeah.
And I remember that day, my teacher had to call my mom. Like, hey, she's out here telling the kids this story, because it became a huge fight. And they came and they explained all of this to me, that, hey, I'm your birth mother, but this is my sister, but we both love you very much, and it doesn't make a difference. So I think little moments like that where I felt a little disconnected, because my moms would always give me all these encyclopedias and these books to broaden my horizon, even as a child. I remember reading The Diary of Anne Frank when I was 7. Terrible idea on their part. I'm still terrified of top bunk beds. No, truly, because Anne Frank's sister, she falls from the top bunk. So I could never, sleep on a top bunk because I was terrified. But I'm grateful for that. So I think because of that, it never really felt too connected with kids my age growing up. And so I said I wanted to move. So they took me to Faith Montessori School. So I was there for a while. Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting school.
So what do you think, now that you're older, and I'm hearing the story, I'm asking myself the question, why was it even necessary to explain this to the other kids about whether you had 2 moms or not? Like, why was that so relevant?
Because it was the first day of school. Everyone's talking about their parents. Because for some reason we felt a need to do that back then, which in hindsight may have been very insensitive to kids who may have lost a parent or who didn't have.
Oh, but
their
kids
parents.
don't
But we
care
don't
about
think
that.
about these
Yeah.
things. So everyone was talking about their parents, and I was like, "Oh well, I happen to have two moms."
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
thought it
So
was, like,
everybody,
super
they
cool.
even mathematics in Paris, we're
Yeah.
doing it. Say, my
Yeah.
father has this, my father has a car.
Yeah.
You
So
know?
that's why I'm trying to understand why the teacher would call your mom.
Yeah.
and your
So
parents have to
because
come to
because it
explain.
turned into, because I still am that way. I always say, as much as I've grown and I'm a product of my experiences, I do believe that much of our personality is formed when we're very, very young. And then the experiences we go through evolve that personality. So back then, if I said something was fact and somebody told me, no, it's not, I would not rest
Yeah.
until you saw my point of view.
Yeah.
And it was just, it turned into this huge argument. Like, kids, we're all shouting, and it was disrupting even into when we returned to class. Like, the kids were like, oh, she's saying that she has two mothers. She doesn't have two
Yeah.
mothers. It was like a whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Dope,
I think
dope.
that
Big
was
go.
why.
So still on your acting and everything that you do. So yeah, because you enjoyed films, it made everything a larger than life.
Yeah.
Did you set out consciously to do film, or that thought came back later on in life?
So when I was a little older, I was still a teenager, I was still young, I moved to Texas for high school. And unlike here, you get to have, broader experiences even within your school life. Theater was a class I could take, which was part of my curriculum, which I could get graded on just the same as algebra. Choir was also one of those subjects. Speech and debate, where you could actually compete in the National Forensic League, which I was a member of. And while I was there trying to decide what my classes were going to be, I said, this is a perfect time for me to actually work on this craft. I had joined an agency at the time back in Texas, John Robert Powers, where I was learning, a few workshops, mostly modeling and acting, which my aunt pulled me out of. Again, very grateful, because the exploitation of young children within the film and commercial scene in the US or really anywhere is abysmal. Some parents don't have the foresight to know that, hey, this is not a space for my child to be in. But I was very, very lucky that my aunt said, no, I'm pulling you out. I didn't understand it then, but I fully understand it now. So when I saw that there was an opportunity for me to hone my craft in school and get graded on it, I leapt at the mere notion of it. Not motion. At the mere
Motion film.
notion of it. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's where my true journey in film started, where I could compete in dramatic interpretation, humorous interpretation, and actually work on my craft.
So your auntie and your two moms, were they living together?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Now it makes sense.
Which is why I was so darn confused.
Yeah, now it makes sense.
They're living together. My dad lived, so we had a family house here in North Kaneshi. We still do. And my father lived there. My mom lived there. My
That's
aunt,
dope.
my uncle Shay, Loyal Kotampa, also lived there.
That's dope.
Yeah.
Remember in one of our episodes, I said that's my dream, to have money and build a big house where everybody would come.
I used to think that when I was a kid, but now I know it's not going to happen.
Yeah, Charlie, same.
So I'm so used to family being so close and very much involved in everyone's business because they all live together. And it was very harmonious.
Do you have siblings?
So my dad had a son many years before he met my mother in Ghana when he lived in Romania. My half brother Aline, but Aline passed some years back.
Oh, sorry.
So
Condolences.
now I am the only child of my parents.
That's dope. Fred, you get any question around this side?
Well, it's something along what she was talking about. I just want to go back to because she said the child industry, I guess, in the US with modeling and commercial space is abysmal. Because I'm just trying to understand a possibility. Obviously, there's a need for kids to have some sort of presence in the overall industry. And also, there's no need for it to be exploitative. So, knowing what you know, how would you resolve that? What are the things that you think are wrong that you would correct? Or how would you let kids like yourself who have that inkling to be involved in the industry get an early start without being exploited?
I mean, first of all, we need to screen the people who are casting these kids, the people who are directing these kids, because we can say all day long, oh, we want to protect the kids, we want to do this, we want to do that, but if the director, the person in charge, is somebody who is, harassing kids and exploiting kids, then there's not much you can do around that. There are certain people who are given too much
power. When you say
power.
exploiting, you mean sexual?
Sometimes sexual, sometimes just not paying them what they're worth. Many different ways. Sometimes just being verbally abusive, especially when it's racially motivated, this abuse, or just, a gender-based abuse, or even sexuality-based abuse.
You would basically screen the adults who are in that industry to make sure that there's a standard of compliance to compensation and also interaction between adults and kids. Not to dwell on this because I know it's a side conversation.
But it's important.
But I always like to follow things all the way through. So with the question I have is, because I'm a capitalist, I'm just thinking, kids being compensated what they are worth. How do you determine the worth of a kid who's trying to learn or trying to now be introduced into an industry? Okay. How would you go about determining the value?
The thing with industries such as modeling and acting is that you can't differentiate the value of a child actor from an adult actor.
Okay.
A value of an actor is honestly rooted, in my opinion, rooted in how much work that they are providing and the quality of work. Sometimes it goes as far as to their personal pull, like the pull that their brand has or the pull that their name alone may have. But that's even going a step further. Now, we obviously, in other industries, I can't say that for Ghana, unfortunately, but in other industries, you have certain minimum wages for actors, depending on whether or not they are supporting actors or lead actors or they're even extras.
Right.
So, sadly, it isn't always the case that children are being paid the same as the adult actors. I'm sure there are many excuses as to why, but we can all attest to the fact that there are many projects on which children are exceeding expectations. And we can't say they're just learning. There are some children who have had extensive training, and they're very, very skilled, more so than even some of their adult counterparts.
Okay. So you're speaking compensation on if they are actually in a product that's out, they should be compensated.
Absolutely.
Okay, that I agree.
Absolutely.
I thought we were talking about like the process of learning and being in an institution.
No.
Okay, I got you. Makes sense.
So how is the acting scene in Ghana? Like generally?
You're trying to get me in trouble.
Oh no! Because you mentioned it, you said, "Oh, Ghana." Nah. So how is the acting scene in Ghana? Like, since you are in there, since you are a part of them.
There are a lot of unfortunate parts of the industry that we could work on. Back to the topic of compensation, we don't have a specific minimum wage for actors here in Ghana, which means that payment is at the discretion of the production house or the director. we don't have an active Actors Guild. We used to have one. Presently, if either one of you wanted to sign up for the guild, there is no way for you to do so. Guilds protect your rights as actors. As a capitalist, you understand the way unions work. And if you don't have a union protecting, your rights or your contracts or your working standard, then it means that your entire livelihood is completely at the mercy of these directors and production houses. And as you know, if human beings are giving leeway to abuse a system, they will do so.
Yeah. So we've been talking about acting, you being, an actress. What are some of the films that you've been in?
More recently, I was in the multinational film Single Not Searching, which is...
I think I saw that as a friend of yours shared it on their page.
Oh.
Is it Buki?
Kabuki.
Yeah.
Did
Someone else.
Maybe.
Yeah, because I saw it somewhere. Yeah. Oh, dope.
Buki's amazing. Shout out to Buki, one of the best people I know. Buki is also in another one of my films, the one that I produced, The Kids Are Not All Right.
Yeah.
It was written and directed by Uche Agu, who is a Nigerian-American writer and director. I worked on the story with him, and we created this beautiful film, which was actually shot at St. Martin de Porres.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Yeah, in Mrs. Last's office.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shout.
So, I mean,
Yeah, that's a dope
serendipity
lady,
right
man.
there. Oh, she's amazing.
Yeah, she's-
Amazing. So understanding, so kind. Yeah, incredible.
So ahead of your
incredible.
time too. Mutombo asked you about the film industry here, and you spoke on compensation and the idea of unions and stuff. One of the running themes of several episodes for us has been the idea of organizing. And there seems to be a cultural deficit, if I can call it that,
I think you could.
in our ecosystem where there's just no zeal, no appetite for let's organize ourselves because we're professionals, we're actors, we need to get our due. I think culturally we're more comfortable with, I know the boss, I'm going to get closer to the boss. So I will get paid, but you stay over there and suffer. And I will attribute your lack of success to your karma, your destiny, whatever it is that we want to associate it with. I'm trying to ask you if you've ever tried to figure out why that is so prevalent here with a lack of organization amongst any group, or whether it's architects or artists or whoever.
Yeah. I'm actually going to take this back to a conversation I was having with Mutumbu much earlier on, before we even started the podcast. He was telling me about growing up in this neighborhood and how everybody had a hand in his upbringing. There was a sense of community. And that sense of community is something that we've lost over the years. The more that we venture into any kind of business or any kind of industry, which ironically you require a sense of community to build, somewhere along the line, we've been fed a lie that you need to do things on your own. That if you attach other people to your project, they will bring you down, they will ruin the vision that you have. And that's understandable if you had a vision to begin with. Unfortunately, we...
Shots fired.
Maybe. Unfortunately, we're at a place which truly we shouldn't be, because again, like we were saying before, the Ghana Film Industry Corporation was set up in 1964 by Grandpa, and so we should be, far ahead.
Decades, right?
Several decades ahead in film, and yet we're so far behind. Ghana was ironically the first country in the world to film a full feature-length film on VHS camera.
Wow.
No other country in the world had done that up until that point.
Wow.
The very first. We can claim of being pioneers in film. And yet today we are so far behind.
The films are shit. I'm sorry.
And back then, yes, no, you can say it. You're allowed to say so. And back then there was that sense of community.
Yeah.
People came together to study together, to work together, to collaborate on filmmaking. Today, people want to have the full credit for themselves. Actors don't even want to tell their friends about auditions when they come up.
You sound quite personal, like you are speaking like you have been in several experiences.
Well, yes, I'm lucky enough that the actor friends that I do have, we have created a sense of community within ourselves. When Uche and I decided to make The Kids Are Not All Right, the first person I thought of was Buki. I said, oh, Buki is a brilliant actor. Yes, she's my friend, but I can also vouch for her work. I'm going to show her work to the director. If it's what you want, then that's who we would want in the film. The first person I thought of for sound was Amazing. I don't know if you know Amazing.
No.
He's on every single film set. He's the go-to sound guy. I had, at that point, known a few people who worked on the crew that I had met here and there. My mind immediately went to them because I've seen their work. Some of them were not even my friends, but I had seen the work that they do, and it was up to par. So I said, hey, let's call up these people. So unfortunately, what people tend to do is, unless they're gaining something from the person that they're calling, be it personal or financially, they're only going to be calling a very select group of people, which means you're not going to even grow as a filmmaker, and you're not going to grow as an actor either. I think every time I work with somebody new or somebody who's constantly developing their craft, I learn something new about the craft myself. And I think that's a huge problem as to why we're still stuck in that space.
Yeah, dope. So, you have mentioned a few members, of your family. You said you told us about how everybody was close. You guys lived together as one unit and all that. And now you just made mention of your grandpa helping set up the film
The Ghana Film Industry
industry
Corporation.
in 1964. Yeah. So who is your grandfather? Can you tell us a little bit about him?
My grandfather is Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah.
Booyaka!
Is he your direct grandfather, or maybe your uncles, fathers, brothers, aunties, younger brother?
I see how one could assume that. No, he's my father's father.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So who is your father?
Sekou Nkrumah.
Oh wow! Sekou is your father.
Yes.
Pure one, black.
Yes.
Oh wow, that's dope.
Yeah.
Do you think you get your vim like the vim you used when you were talking about building your own table from your grandfather?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think in truth, all of us have a certain zeal and a certain fight. My Aunt Samia is one of the strongest women that I know. Every day she inspires me. My father has his own je ne sais quoi, and he's also a fighter, very strong-willed. My Uncle Gamel, through his journalism and his writing, is always trying to push for truth. And I think that in some ways that could be genetic or hereditary.
Yeah.
But in many ways, I also wonder if it's just the sense of self that Grandpa passed on. Because to have a last name like Nkrumah, that carries a lot of weight and legacy. And I always say this, his legacy is not meant for the family alone. Once you are Ghanaian, once you are African, once you are a black person, even in the diaspora, his legacy is also your legacy.
But you are blood.
Yes.
And so you are different from
Yes.
from
So
us.
so there is a slight sense
Yeah.
of responsibility
Yeah.
that may be inbuilt
Yeah.
that leads us to want to further that legacy in whatever it is that we might be doing.
Yeah, I don't know your age, but I'm 100% sure that Nkrumah passed before you were born.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and you look like your auntie Samia. Have you ever been told?
Always.
It's crazy.
Always.
And also, I see your grandmom a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit
Of
of my
yeah,
grandma. Yeah.
even though I've never met I never met her. Did I meet your grandmom? I think I
It's
did.
possible because
Yeah, I think I
she
did.
passed in
Fatia?
2006.
6, 7. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I saw her somewhere
It's
once.
very, very possible.
Yeah.
Very possible.
Yeah, I see, what are some of the stories? Because Fred has read extensively about him. I have read and I've watched extensively about him. We still think, and we spoke about this with Pastor Pascaka, that there should be a Kwame Nkrumah film, which we are going to speak about.
Disagree with.
Yeah, but in your household, how did it feel like? And what are some of the stories that you heard about Grandpa, like you
my
call
goodness.
him? Yeah.
Poof. That's a very, very heavy question. From my dad, because my dad was very, very young when the coup. I don't like referring to it as a coup. The illegal military overthrow
Charlie.
occurred. My father was 2.
Oh, okay.
He was an infant. My grandma carried him as they fled for their lives. And so unfortunately my dad didn't get to experience him too much as a father.
Yeah.
My Aunt Samia, however, was much older.
How old was she?
Oh, wow. I can't remember.
Like 6?
Possibly, maybe
7?
older.
Yeah. Okay.
So she understood what was going on. She had a good understanding of him as a person. She would, watch him. The one through line throughout most of the stories was just how busy he was and how dedicated to his work he was, almost to a fault where he didn't have as much time for family.
Yeah.
Which
To chill.
Yeah, to chill
Yeah.
or just to enjoy himself. I always find it interesting when you see heads of states across the world being able to go on vacation and enjoy, time with their family. And then I think about the fact that most African leaders in those days, people like Nkrumah, like Patrice Lumumba, like even much later on with Thomas Sankara, they didn't get to have as much of a personal life because their journey was very, very different. They had to rebuild a nation, or in Nkrumah's case, build a nation from the ground up.
Yeah.
And that, if you want to do it well, at least, would require all of yourself.
Yeah.
And I think those were the stories that helped give me a clear sense of
Yeah.
self.
Sorry, laughing. I'm laughing because, sorry, I'm so sorry. When you were mentioning the presidents, like Lumumba, and I thought you were going to say Akufo-Addo.
I'm talking about
Yeah, I know,
presidents of-
I know, but
of
for
a
some funny
specific
reason,
decade.
yeah, but for some funny reason, Akufo-Addo came to me.
Drink to that.
Yeah, sorry for chopping you off,
People,
but
you like
yeah,
trouble.
I'm wondering how it will feel like for someone like mentioning Kwame Nkrumah, Lumumba, and all that. Then at the bottom, you just pop in Akufo-Addo.
That ain't happening.
I think they've all these people have had very different journeys.
Yeah.
And at very different moments in time. I think that their path is simply very different.
Yeah.
What is required of them is different.
Which path would you choose? And are you going to choose your grandfather's path because you guys are related? Like which path, like Ekufuado's path, or you choose Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's path?
Well, and I say this only because I feel as though by the time I would get to a place where venturing into politics would even be an option for me, sadly, with the trajectory that our country is taking, it might require a path more similar to Nkrumah's.
Dope.
Hopefully, we don't get to a place where we have to rebuild things from scratch. But we do live in a country where much of what we enjoy, ironically, are things that were set up by Nkrumah.
That's crazy.
We have not made much viable progress since. And that is disheartening, quite frankly, heartbreaking.
Fred, before you enter, what is this? 49, 39?
49, 39. I don't know.
Is it a brand?
I just like the t-shirt. It matched my pants.
Yeah, to me, when I saw it, no, like sure banker.
Yeah.
Too sure.
Yeah.
49, 39. Shall Derek, 49, 39. Yeah, Fred.
So, when you started speaking earlier, you said you moved to Texas at some point, but prior to that, you had your leanings towards seeing yourself through characters.
Yes.
Then you talked about going to Texas, being able to join certain organizations like,
The National Forensic League.
Yeah, and there seems to be some organized way that your life, I don't want to say curated because it seems artificial, but I'm saying that you seem to have had a guide through, like maybe be around family who were chipping into, hey, maybe you should look into this, maybe you should look into that. And now we've brought the conversation all the way forward to your grandpa and his impact on the country and how you potentially, may, if you do, ever go into politics, would have to almost do it in a structured way to try and get the country on the path that a lot of us believe it needs to be on. He's asking you about your last name. I'm also asking you, has it ever felt like weight to come from what you come from, being, do this, do things the right way. You seem very well put together, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's a great thing, but you seem very, fine-tuned, focused, intelligent, well-read across the board. And I know that growing up maybe in an environment where the expectations are there and everyone is an achiever, it can sometimes feel like a weight. I don't know if it felt like that for you, but I'm trying to understand your experience as you have obviously now as a full-blown woman, mature and understanding of the world around you, how you interpret your childhood, who you are, what your last name means, and what your responsibility towards it is.
That is honestly one of the best questions I've ever been asked, truly. So kudos to you for that.
Shouts.
Very much so. No, was it a lot of pressure? I'm inclined to say no. Does it feel heavy at times? Not for the reasons that people might think. I think that, yes, because of my last name, there is a sense of responsibility. We've spoken about that. But in addition to that, because of my household and its makeup, not just because of my Uncle Shay and his activism and his work for fighting for justice, which I witnessed throughout my life, but the work ethic that my mother had. My mother was also very much involved in activism, the late Annette Nkrumah. And my aunt was a very particular individual with everything that she did. I think that they instilled in me a sense of, I wouldn't call it perfectionism, but a duty to do things the right way at all times. They never allowed me to mess up anything if it couldn't be helped. They allowed me to make mistakes, which is why I say I didn't feel a sense of pressure. They allowed me to find my own path, but more importantly, there was always this overwhelming support. Like you said, it feels almost like there was a guide in my life. I'd always wanted to study law, but I also wanted to study the arts. Mtumbu mentioned it earlier on that I paint occasionally. I'm also a writer. At every section and juncture of my life, if I showed any interest in anything new, I was given the space and the tools to explore that. And it wasn't with any pressure. It was, oh, do you think you might enjoy this? Let's see. Is this something you are actually good at, or is this just a pipe dream?
Yeah.
Because it was very important to not get lost in a dream that you don't have innate talent for.
Right.
Which sadly, on the line of being supportive, parents and family, sometimes we allow our kids to get so far lost into a dream that may not necessarily be meant for them. So there was a sense of practicality with that, as well as an unconditional love and support, which is why with everything I do, I think at all times at the back of my mind, I think of all the many people who poured into me, who have made me the woman that I am today. I never want them to be disappointed in anything that I do. And at the same time, more than that, which is what they always told me, don't think about what I think. What do you think? Are you proud of what you're doing? Are you happy with this work? And if the answer is no, it doesn't matter if I don't like it. It doesn't matter if I do like it. It doesn't matter if everybody out there is celebrating it and cheering it on. If you know it is not up to par for yourself, then something's wrong and you need to fix it.
Right. That's an amazing way, I would say, to grow up, and not to, in a very, very small way. I was asking for my own benefit because I came from a family where my grandpa also looms very large over the family. And the missing pieces for me have always been, there was no sense of direction, and there was no feel of unity. After my granddad, unceremoniously was killed, it felt like something in my family detonated, and we started gnawing at each other rather than coming together. So I was having a conversation with an uncle, and I said to him, because we're having a dispute, and I was trying to explain to him how growing up, even though I come from a family of 77 potential uncles and aunties, right? There's never been a time in my life where I picked up a phone to call an uncle to say, and I was touched by the Texas story, because I remember being in the States wondering what path to take. I'm in university now, you have to pick a career, you want to know even how to select your courses, who to speak to, mentorship. Yeah, it's a whole lot, because getting educated is not something that you just happens to you. You have to, it's a skill. And I couldn't call anybody, whether it's personal relationships or professional or academic and all of that. And I'm shedding light on the amazing job that your family has done to, make you a whole human being who seems compassionate, considerate, very well educated. And the last thing I want to say about it, I'm going on a rant because I do this a lot on this podcast, but with you and your family, the one thing that's always stood out for me is you guys don't seem entitled. It's shocking to me. I mean, you come from the founder of the country. He's done so many amazing things.
But Fred,
yeah,
I don't mean to cut you. I think it could be a different story if Kwame Nkrumah was the current, president. It could be a different story.
it could be.
Yeah, it could be.
I don't know if that's true.
Why?
And the reason I say that is
Because from 57 till now, like so many, the decades.
that is
Yeah,
true.
like people change. I'm not saying it's like conk. It will be. I'm saying
I hear you.
It could be.
But I think it's a good
Because
counter-
your father being a president or your grandfather being a president is a big deal.
It's a big deal. But that's why I'm trying to understand how they still maintain that. So, okay, Tombo, I love that you brought that. So we'll let Princess answer it when you and I. What Tombo is saying is a valid
Very, very
perspective.
valid.
But I'm also asking, see, we've had, I don't know how many presidents since Kwame Nkrumah, but we've had enough examples where now you have solid data to throw your weight about. To be like, you ain't shit. You definitely not shit. You don't even mention your name in the same sentence as my grandfather, or my father. There's enough evidence for them to walk about and be like, you see, you people got rid of my father or my grandfather. Now look at it. I don't hear that. I don't see that. I don't see that sense of entitlement of even wanting to make Kwame Nkrumah, let's say, canonize him. You guys blend into society. You're never seen or heard, chirping or doing. And I'm trying to understand if it is a conscious thing by your family, if it's you guys are raised that way, or you're just, the way you guys are by default.
I think this goes back to our discussion on his legacy. I don't think that's something he would have wanted if he was obviously not still alive, but if he had been alive for much longer. He didn't raise the kids to feel more important than anybody else. As we've come to know, he didn't have any possessions of his own. Everything that he had, he poured into the state. And I think that there's a very, very different understanding of what it means to be a head of state versus what it means presently or really anywhere else in the world. For him, he was a servant of the state as opposed to a head. Everything that he did, everything that he had was for the country. It didn't make him better than anybody else. It didn't make his family better than anybody else. And I think that if you carry that understanding, it would be extremely difficult to walk around with a sense of entitlement. Is it unfortunate that the overthrow occurred? Of course. Do we think that the country could potentially have been better off had it not occurred then? Yes. But what happened. Trying to create some kind of division amongst the people simply because of those facts is going to be counterproductive. That's not what we want. The point is not to say, oh, you did this and you did that. We're not about pointing fingers at anybody. I think the bottom line right now should be about figuring out where we've gone wrong and how to get us back on track.
Dope.
Okay.
Dope. So this is so crazy. It just hit me, right? So my direct grandfather is the first director of sports, Ohinijan. Yeah, the Accra Sports Stadium was named after him. And your father, employed him, right? It just hit me. My grandmother was a Mokola woman then. Yeah, she used to go to other countries to bring wax prints to sell. And the reason why I asked what were some of the stories you heard about him, because in my house, I heard stories about Kwame Nkrumah almost at least once a month.
I'm sure.
My grandma will be talking about, or even singing some of the songs that they sang for Nkrumah when he came to Mokola or Accra or during his campaign.
He had an incredible relationship with the women there.
Yeah, my grandmom said, my grandmom even, I think, went to march. She was part of the Mokola, woman, and it always takes me close to back then, right? Like Fred's earlier question about like your father, like whether you guys walk around with a chip on your, I think like I said, if he was the president now, things would have been different, right? But what I want to ask, to back, maybe it might be the same thing, but I'm making it very, very simple and straight. Have you ever thrown your surname around just to get things?
That is a very good question.
Yeah.
I would be completely remiss to pretend that the mere fact that I have this surname does not open certain doors for me. I would be lying to myself. As to throwing it around on purpose, there may have been a few times when I have had to make clear what my surname was without saying much. Not
You
because
know how to talk, pa. You know how to
You'll be a
talk.
great
Like your
politician.
words, your choice of words are so impeccable. Yeah.
Now fuck with me.
no, not in that sense, but sadly, all over the world, people lack a sense of compassion and empathy, which for some reason gives them license to disrespect anybody that they don't think deserves their respect. I think everybody deserves your respect up until they prove themselves unworthy of your respect. Because respect is, in fact, something that is earned. Your last name should not earn you respect. Your position should not earn you respect. It's the way that you treat people that earns you respect. But for most people, it is how much money you have or what connections you have that award you respect. So there have been instances where either I was being disrespected in one way or another, and oftentimes I can accept certain levels of disrespect, mainly because I try not to take it personally. People are going through their own things. They feel a need to take it out on other people, so I'll let it go. But in situations where I find other people being disrespected, if I'm aware that making whoever is doing the disrespecting aware of my last name would put a stop to that disrespect, I will, in fact, use it where I need to. There was a situation recently, without naming names, where we were doing a project with an institution, and at the very last minute, the institution decided that they weren't going to pay the people what had been agreed upon. And this came out of nowhere. And I know that a lot of these people were relying on this paycheck, even for the week at least. And I had to go into the office and I had to speak to them very candidly. I had to mention my name and throw around the fact that this project had strong ties to my grandfather's legacy, and what they were doing was an affront to it, and the people got paid. It's not something I enjoy doing because, again, in an ideal world, it shouldn't matter if my last name is Nkrumah or Nyantechi or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, but the world is not ideal.
But the world is not ideal. So I wouldn't use it for, frivolous things or for my own benefit where it can be helped. But if necessary, where it would do some difference, I sometimes feel a need to.
Yeah, because like, should I say this? Recently, people throw the Boache Danquest and all sort of surnames, surnames around in town.
Yeah.
Who's watching that?
Oh, Charlie, the Achem people, the Danquest, the Boache Danquest, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, people they throw those
Sorry,
names
I
around.
always see it like that.
Yeah. So we gotta go. Charlie, I think enough about your grandfather. Yeah, maybe we might come back to that later, but let's talk about your style.
Oh, my style. Do
Yeah.
I have one?
It looks like, and I hear you sometimes costume design too on set.
I do, where it can be helped. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So your style, like, what do you feel comfy wearing? What don't you wear?
Oh,
You know,
almost anything.
jewelry.
Almost anything.
Because you came with
This is just the vibe that I was feeling for today.
Oh,
I had
okay.
no idea what I was going to wear until maybe 15 minutes before I left the house.
No, okay.
So I was like, oh, what do I want to wear? I was like, oh, I felt like wearing black, but then I also wanted to wear something that was rooted in my roots, so to
Represent.
speak. So I was like, okay, I guess I had this little jacket. I said I could throw this on, and then the jewelry just kind of fell into place. As far as costuming on set, a huge part of my character development when I'm playing a new role is in my costume and my hair and the makeup. I need to connect with who the person is, and most often it's going to be very different from the way I would dress in my day-to-day life. So I would often spend time like finding outfits either that I already own, or maybe I'll go into my mom's old closet, or maybe I'll thrift some things that fit the vibe of the character. And then a lot of the time I'll show up on set and the director will go, oh, yeah, you can just wear that. Like, that's fine. And so especially because I went to the Identity School of Acting, and there was a point where, because of COVID, we had to work on Zoom. And I always thought, oh my goodness, how am I going to make sure that the characterization carries across over Zoom as well as I can? So I became almost obsessed with making sure that the hair and the makeup and the clothing was curated for the character. So I think I developed a bit of a knack for it. Recently, we put on a staged reading of the play Sankara by Jude Idada at the Goethe Institute. And it was meant to just be a staged reading, meaning we would just sit around.
I saw that
and
on your Instagram.
But it evolved into almost a full production in parts, obviously without the set design, but I got soldier costumes and the red berets and all kinds of like little elements for the characters so that everybody could feel more rooted in the characters. And it made a world of difference. A lot of the people who came to see it said, I thought you said this was a staged reading. You guys were acting, but you were holding the books. So it's like, well, I wanted it to be a more immersive experience. Yeah.
Why do people even say beret, by the way? Just by the way.
But what is it
Red
called?
beret. That's
Is that the right?
I think that's the right
Yeah.
pronunciation.
Beret.
So beret
But
is-
I mean,
oh.
the
Anyway, I was just
Afro, bleh.
yeah. I love the topic staying on your style because that was one of the most striking things about
Your
you.
boots.
Yeah, when I walked
Oh,
into this
boots?
space, I was like, oh, okay. But there's 3 things I want to ask you about.
Okay.
The kente pattern on your jacket seems
Yes.
very well done. Is it a Ghanaian designer?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
And they stock locally.
I think so. This is actually an older piece.
Okay.
It
No free
belongs-
advertisement, but I'll ask you.
It belongs to my aunt, I think.
Okay.
I'd have to check the tag
It's
in the
impeccably
back.
made. I
Thank
love
you.
that they put a lot
Thank
of
you.
love or attention to detail in it.
Definitely.
And you're wearing a necklace.
Mm.
It's a bead with the ring around it.
Yes.
And is that a gift from your mom or your aunt?
This is actually my mom.
Okay.
This is my mom.
Do you want to know why I'm asking you that?
Why are you asking me that?
It's not from this era.
No, not at all.
That used to be a very expensive piece.
Yes, this is
Comes
true.
from probably the 90s. And there were few people that I knew that had.
You have a very good eye.
Yeah, so and I saw it, I was like, wow. that's taking me back to a place. My mom had one. I think somebody has stolen it. I don't know, but it was a rare time where it was one jeweler who was actually doing these pieces. So I remember it quite well. And then the way you put together your jewelry, your hair is striking. I love that you're still rocking afro.
Thank you.
What goes into it for you? Because you're acting, you're producing, you're in this space where you have to always look a certain type of way. But I'm also assuming that you're very aware of not coming off a certain way.
Of course.
So how do you put things together? Like, what informs your style?
So as much as I like to dress in a way that fits my mood, I also have to be mindful of what I'm doing that day. The way that I would dress for a night out with friends is definitely very different from the way I would dress for a podcast like this, because I'm aware that there's a camera. I'm aware that it could potentially go out into many different spaces. And whether
subscribe. Yeah.
like and subscribe. No, but I've always, since I was a child, been hyper aware of public perception and how that could be used against you. While I am myself not directly in a political space, I have family that are. And I'm aware of the fact that my actions, or even the way that I choose to dress, could be used against them at any given moment. Not that it ever should be.
Shouldn't be.
But it can be.
So you never get a BBL?
I don't know why I would want one.
I'm asking,
but no shade to
No
anybody who chooses to get one. Your body, your choice.
Just your body, your choice, yeah. Several clauses there inside, though.
No, but your body, your choice.
Yeah, well,
your body,
yeah.
your choice. I personally have not found a need for that. Again, we're a product of our experiences. I cannot speak for myself.
Yeah.
50 years down the line, maybe after I've had kids and so on, I may.
You want to still be on the streets, quote
No,
unquote.
you never know. So I'm not going to
Not gonna
condemn
knock it.
anything.
Yeah.
But currently, I haven't found a need to. But yeah, just being mindful of how one is being perceived. Also, but again, maintaining a sense of self, which is why while I try to walk that line, I still want to express myself in whatever way that I can, maybe in the way that I do my makeup or the type of pieces that I choose, you know.
I want to. You want to go?
I just wanted to follow up something, but very quickly. So the reason why we're asking, not the reason why, but we're talking about perception, public, and you're explaining how it's important for people to see you, or not important, but it matters how people perceive you. And I just wanted to follow up to ask you, how do you, I asked you a question about a BBL to just be flippant, because people will walk around and say, Nkrumah's granddaughter, BBL, really? But I'm also trying to ask, are we a society now that we lead with, quote unquote, so much love that they send hard conversations that we're unable to have with people? Because there's a girl that I was talking to, she's awesome. I think she's beautiful. But she had some form of BBL before, and then they jacked it up, and then she wanted to go back and do some more. And the fear that I had about that was there was something deeper to a person's psyche that makes them want to alter themselves so much physically. That was my perception, by the way. I'm not saying that is right, but I'm saying that as much as I had a conversation say, they harmed you the first time, this thing is not necessary. You're still a whole human being that deserves love and all of that. You don't have to do this to yourself, and it's dangerous potentially, and all of that. It came down to, look, I got to do this. And I'm like, why? What is it?
So what I'm going to preface this by saying there's nothing wrong with getting a BBL. If people are looking down on people who get BBLs, that's completely absurd, truly. as far as wanting to go back to have a second procedure done after the first one was botched, it's not just a psyche thing. I'm sure there's a huge part of it that is psychological, but more so I would point at external factors about the value or lack of value that society places on women depending on what they look like. Women, unfortunately, are treated differently based on what they look like, whether it's their face or their body or their size or even the way they dress. A lot of their value is unfortunately tied to their looks. And while for you, you might say, oh, I love you just the way you are, and I think you're gorgeous, and I think you're fantastic. And she might even love herself the way that she is. But she knows how her friends who may have different body types are treated when they both go out together. She might recognize, even in a professional setting, the opportunities or lack thereof that people get depending on what their bodies look like, and then also depending on the industry that she's in. And all of these things inform why wanting that procedure, no matter how life-threatening or dangerous it may be, would be important for her.
Yeah.
I'm only smiling because when you were saying what she does for a living, I was going to say she's a pastor. Which
No, so you laugh at that, but yeah, religion is a very interesting thing. Organized religion, even more so, as much as it should be a space centered around spirituality. If you're a head of a church or you're a leader in any kind of sense, human beings in general, and we're talking about leaders in any field, whether it's in music or in government or in a church, we want to look up to people who are the most idealized versions of what we think we could be. And if society at large is idolizing very specific body types or certain cars and certain houses and certain clothes, if you as a leader, also including a pastor, is not fitting into that ideal, you might not have a congregation that would be hanging on your every word. So yes, it might sound a little absurd, oh, she's a pastor, she shouldn't be thinking about that, but I can also still understand why that would be important.
The labyrinth of your, allowing everybody to be.
Yeah, but really, like, okay, so your body,
Not
your
everybody.
choice. Yeah, okay, cool.
Joking.
your body, your choice, right? Your body, your choice.
Yes.
Okay, so people who bleach, right? Skin bleaching became popular in Ghana
It's very dangerous.
after the 1957s, after this, after Ghana's, independence. And apparently the reason for that was because your grandfather got with,
I knew this was coming.
yes, because your grandfather got with your grandmother, who was from Egypt
Yeah.
and was light skinned or white.
She was
Light
very,
skin.
very pale.
Yeah, very, very pale.
Very, very pale.
Yeah. So according to research, skin bleaching gained popularity in Ghana after, Ghana's independence. What do you have to say to that?
So I completely understand what the general consensus amongst women was at the time. I know that there was a lot of unrest because, first of all, Nkrumah becoming the first president of Ghana, first prime minister and then president, everyone was wondering, and as a bachelor, everyone was wondering, oh, who is the Ghanaian woman that is going to become first lady? And we all know that Nkrumah was very pro-Ghanaian, for Ghana, by Ghana, for Ghana. And I wasn't even a concept at the time, but the Ghanaian populace was very much prepared for him to make a typical Ghanaian woman his wife. And I think that it may have thrown a lot of people off that he would marry a very Arab woman from Egypt, very pale, looking nothing like
any of them, totally different.
Very different hair texture, very, very different in features and in many different ways. And I can understand how that could do a number on the perception of self. If this great man who is our leader could not see what he needed in a wife in any of us, then maybe we need to switch up. We need to conform to this new standard of beauty, because in many countries, first ladies kind of hold the standard of beauty of the time.
Yeah.
What they wear is what everybody else wants to wear. How they do their hair, that's how everybody wants to do their hair. Still, in many ways.
People used to.
Yeah.
Michelle's outfits were a big deal.
Of course.
Trump's
of course.
wife, I can't even remember her name.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Ekufuado's wife, too.
Okay.
Oh, why?
She has some beautiful kente designs
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I
Very
I've
pretty.
heard. I don't
like.
even
Very
know who
pretty.
she is. I haven't seen her.
Yeah,
Oh,
very
Rebecca,
pretty.
you don't know her, Auntie Rebecca.
No. I heard the name in
She
trying to instill chiefs and stuff. But
She's pretty.
yeah, gorgeous. Awesome.
it's a lovely woman.
Yeah.
So I can see how that could lead to an uptake in skin bleaching. It's very unfortunate. That was not at all the point of my grandfather marrying my grandmother.
Do you know why?
Yes, of course.
Trying to bridge, the continent.
Yes, we the ultimate goal still is, for me personally, I'm a Pan-Africanist. The ultimate goal is to one day see a United States of Africa. As we are aware, much of North Africa often feels very disconnected from the rest of Africa, in spite of the fact that they are very much a part of Africa. The other day, I'm not on TikTok, but I see a lot of posts from TikTok make their way to Twitter, X, or Instagram. And the other day, I saw a video of a Moroccan lady saying she doesn't understand why people are always trying to claim Morocco like they're also African. And I'm like, but you are African. I'm so sorry that you're on the continent, but this is what we're working with. And Africans come in all different shapes and colors and sizes and races. And I think for him, he had a very clear vision of the fact that it would be easy to marry somebody from Ghana. And that would strengthen our Ghanaian identity. But he knew that there were many other ways he could do so, by making a point of wearing kente at official events or other made in Ghana fabric and clothing, which is what he did. He had my grandmother also wear kente at every official gathering. And he knew that it would be a much harder task to unite North Africa to West Africa and the rest of Africa. It would not have had as much of an impact if he had married somebody from Central Africa or South Africa, for the mere fact that it's much easier for us to connect with one another because we look quite similar.
Yeah.
So it was a very strategic decision to marry somebody from North Africa. He didn't know my grandmother.
I was actually going to say.
Yes, it's not as though he went somewhere and saw, who is this absolutely stunning, lighter complected woman? Ooh, I must marry her.
Yeah.
It was nothing like that.
I was going to say, so that means Nkrumah be deep. That means Nkrumah didn't marry because of love. Yeah. Marry because of Odo. Like, nah.
Not initially.
This is my plan, my life goal, and I have to ensure that every branch of my life, fights or
It's
works
an age-old
towards that. It'd be crazy.
strategy,
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Caesar did it.
Yeah.
There's so many world leaders that have families, monarchies, have done it.
Yeah.
And I think if you have a long vision like Nkrumah did,
That's important.
it makes absolutely all the sense in the world.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So we've spoke about this a couple of times on the podcast, with how TV, the screen, why are you laughing?
I don't know where this is going. I'm excited.
Do you have an idea? The question.
Not at all. You could go anywhere.
Yeah, for media. How the screen or how the media usually would choose a light-skinned, person over a dark-skinned, person, maybe for an ad, for a music video, for
anything,
a billboard, and all that. Have you ever experienced, something like that where, it was clear that, this other person would be fit for this role, but because I look I look like this, they are picking me over here, and I'm not going to say yes to this because I think I don't really deserve this.
So that hasn't happened to my knowledge.
Okay.
I think if that happened to my knowledge, I would turn it down immediately.
What if it involves like huge sums, like $1 million? Princess, we are giving you $1 million for this role, but
So-
you know what? That we turn this person down because
So
$1 million.
Here's the thing. The unfortunate thing about the film space is that a lot of the time casting choices are made off of physicality alone. Ironically, there was a role that I was up for that I initially got that I had to let go of because the person who was meant to play my father and my mother were darker skinned. So I ended up having to do a different role in the project. And that role had to go to a darker complected individual, which I was actually happy about.
Yeah, of course.
Because I've been on other sets where
People would
I've
have
seen...
said, why did he give birth? It's like, how?
No, truly, where I've seen people, and truly, I was very good for the role acting-wise. I made it through all the stages of the audition. The director really enjoyed my work. We were gearing up for it, but the other people who ended up being cast, who are the most ideal people to play the father and mother of that character, ended up being darker complected. And there are other directors who would have gone ahead and done it anyway. But the fact that this director understood that would be poor storytelling, I had no qualms with it. The other role was just as great for me, and was a role that I could play, so I didn't have a problem with it. With the film, The Kids Are Not Alright, you've met Buki. Buki is darker complected. I think I'm the only lighter complected character in that film, and the film is stunning. I'll show you the trailer.
Is it online?
Not yet, but the trailer is out.
But do you have it anywhere
I have a
on
link.
your laptop?
I have a link.
Which I actually.
I have a link.
This is
I don't
this is
know.
off the record. This
No,
off
it's
record.
very much on the record. I see the camera.
Oh no
right
no
there.
no! I will chop this. I'm gonna chop this place off. Yeah.
Don't get me in trouble now. No, but yeah, and it's such a stunning film. Everybody is lit so beautifully. Everybody's skin looks gorgeous on camera. There was a time when in Ghana, or really anywhere in the world, but I remember a section of time in Ghana because when I moved back, I was around 17. And I started working in film here and there before I took a break to finish my law course. And a lot of directors were shying away from hiring darker complected people.
Yeah.
And the excuse would always be, oh, the lighting, they don't show up properly on camera and all kinds of nonsense. And it's like, buy better lights. Light them properly. Like, you're using these weird, harsh lights that aren't for their skin. If you want to be working in Ghana, in Africa, where the majority of us are darker complected, you should learn how to light for their skin. But that's a huge problem with education on any field, even in medicine.
Yeah.
You open up some medical textbooks and they're talking about a specific skin condition or a rash, and it's a white person,
Yeah.
white skin, and that rash would look very different on a black person or a darker complected person. So a lot of doctors don't even recognize certain illnesses when they see them on black people or on darker complected people. In that same vein, when unfortunately, even here in Africa, when people are studying film, when they start studying lighting, they're learning it through the lens of the West.
Yeah.
So they are never skilled on lighting black skin. And that's something that needs to change. And hopefully as it changes more, we'll see more darker skinned people on screen. Thankfully, I think that is changing. We're starting to see more darker complected people on screen.
Just prolonging the discussion around skin, around bleaching, around sense of self-worth. You know, we've had several conversations about this, and I'm still struggling to understand how it can impact people so viscerally, because my mom is dark, and I grew up thinking she was one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen. You know what I mean? And I've experienced my preference. I don't discriminate, but my preference would be darker skinned women. Even though I've said 100 times on the show, they tend not to like me. I don't know why.
So
I'm
sad.
always so sad. But I'm just trying to understand how a simple decision as skin tone can be so impactful to people's sense of self-worth or world perspective. That's like, okay, for me, when I meet an individual, the it's not their skin tone that occurs to me first. It's usually the content of their thoughts or
Of
words
course.
and the interaction. And I'm like, okay, cool, that's it. I move on. I don't leave with any particular impression about their skin color. But it seems to be an issue. It seems to be a very big deal. And so one school of thought thinks it's the westernized way of marketing, branding, blah, blah, blah. And then another school of thought says it's an inferiority complex, or whatever the case may be, that people feel like they want to be other because of what they've seen in movies, aspirationally, right? But I want to ask you this, because I'm trying to understand if I'm in a society where I'm evolving technology for TV and stuff, and I'm making lighting. The majority of the people in the country, just like in Ghana, majority of us are black. In the West, majority at some point were white. And so is it necessarily that it was intentional discrimination, or I'm struggling to put this where it's not like, it doesn't sound crazy, that we weren't a significant enough number of the population where they were going to skew their research to say, how do we light black skin? Because we're telling stories for and by white people by and large. So that's what we know, and that's what we're going to do. And the responsibility being on our own first leader thought it useful to establish Ghana Film something I can't. I'm terrible with like names.
That's okay.
But whatever you said in
The
'64,
Ghana
that year,
Film Industry
Industry
Corporation.
So I would, knowing what I know now, lay that responsibility at the feet of the Ghana Film Industry Corporation and everything that came out of it, you know, after that, to do the technical research to understand that the lighting that exists does not do well on black skin. So how do we alter it rather than depending on Western infrastructure to change that for us and then turn it into a racial discussion about why they're not letting us in and stuff like that. I don't know if you find a question in there, but I'm trying to get you to comment on the thought process.
I find multiple questions in there. The first one that I would address is the fact that, I mean, we can look back at the films that came out of the initial formation of the Ghana Film Industry Corporation. And if you ask me, the lighting was stunning, beautiful. Many of these actors were darker complected. They looked absolutely gorgeous in film. So it was very clear even then that if you are conscious of who you want to film, you would make the provisions for them. You would use the lighting that you do have to cater to them. So I think it is a matter of carelessness, for one, where it might be easier to light lighter skinned people. You might not have to put as much work into it.
It is. It is actually
effort.
easier.
It is.
Yeah.
You might not have to put as much effort into it. And people, sadly, do not want to put in the extra effort. And maybe that's something that we need to change. Maybe it's a culture of, I don't want to say we have a culture of being lackluster, because that would be insensitive to even people like you who are working hard to go the extra mile and to put in that extra effort. But largely, we tend to want to take the easy way out.
Yeah.
The second part of this is that, yes, the West, America more specifically, because that is the heart of Hollywood, has largely catered to white people, because the people in, production, executive positions are white. And so they are making films for themselves, by themselves, with themselves. Only casting black people in roles of the help for as long as humanly possible. The issue with that is, unfortunately, while black people might be a minority in America, they are present in many, many spaces. There are many communities that are predominantly black.
Yeah.
And they didn't get there on their own.
Right.
They didn't hop on a plane and show up one day.
Like some of us did.
They got there because they were ripped from the shores of their birthland, of their motherland, and sold off as slaves. They've had to work through that for over 200 years, get to a place where they can pretend that they are being viewed as part of the system. The very least that the film industry can do is to represent them in a land that they have been placed in. Because whether they want to admit it or not, black people exist within America, minority or not. So as long as there's a group of people that exist in a society or within a larger community, they deserve to be represented. They have to be represented. So, yes, they're a minority, but they have to be represented, which means lighting needs to evolve to a place where they are being shown in their best light.
One of my most amazing experiences I had when I moved back to Ghana was, I tell this story multiple times. So if you've heard me say it, please, sorry. But you're here now, so I have to ask you. Have you ever been to, I think it's called the Maritime University?
Oh, I have not.
It's on the Teshi Road.
No, I can't say.
I think it's up there somewhere. It's a university that was built by your grandpa. And when I went there, we were going there to sell a car. But that's another story, Charlie.
Of all the things.
Yeah. But when we got there, and I'm asking my brother, who's a big fan of your father, by the way, he was like, I'm like, where is this place? And there's a submarine, there's this, there's that. And so apparently the Germans have taken over the space and they're doing whatever. But
Sure have.
I was like, man, this guy. So I was, in all honesty, very critical at some point of your grandpa as well.
Naturally.
Now I was like, there's certain things that didn't add up to me. I was reading some CIA documents and blah, blah. But I had gone through my phases. I was in love, then I was critical. Now I'm absolutely back in love. And I was like, how did this guy achieve so much in the time period in which he did it? University after university after university. Like you said, he gave a bit of a hint of it, that when you look at all of the infrastructure, the proper machination of this country, the things that turns the economic engines, pretty much established by your grandpa's government. And it doesn't feel as though much has been added on to it. So how does that, for us as a people, and you're part of the people,
Yes.
how is that not a calculus for all these standards for leadership? Like, how have we fallen so far where people are now telling us we'll keep Doomsaw off, or we'll, they're promising us the basics 60-something plus years after the fact, when this visionary was leading us in completely wild directions. Like one saying Ghana was the first country to film on VHS and all of that. It's mind-blowing to me.
It
Like,
is.
it's like we were cutting edge, and all of a sudden, it's like we went 800 years back. How does that make you feel? What do you think your grandpa's, like, what was pushing him, or what was informing him, what was inspiring him? How do you think he was able to have this big, big vision? Like, where did it come from?
Well, so this is what I will say. It's easy to want to say, oh, how come we can't keep that same vision or that work ethic that he had? If he was able to do it, why can't we do so now? And then we ignore the talents of neocolonialism that are deeply rooted in our government, in our commerce, in our way of life, and how that unfortunately prevents us from having full autonomy over anything. In truth, yes, we are in a globalized world, but much of the West, in order to get to the places they've gotten to now, to be able to call themselves superpowers, they did so through policies of isolationism, through policies that spearheaded being self-reliant, which is something Nkrumah understood, and which was a huge reason why we were able to do so much in such a short amount of time, is because we were managing our own affairs. We had control over our own initiatives, or what he was doing, which was, again, for his detractors, a negative about his leadership style. People will call it being a dictator. When you are a new country with as many resources as Ghana has, unfortunately, there are many other powers that be who want a stake in your resources, both human and mineral resources. And when that happens, you need to take a stand. You need to be conscious of the fact that you're going to have to be very narrow-minded. You're going to have to focus only on the developmental stages of your country. And you're going to have to do so in a manner where you don't allow people who are not of that same vision to interfere. And that requires a different hand, which we might not understand today. Now, we can't do that with Ghana as it currently stands because we are so far globalized, because we are not an island, because we gave up on any semblance of isolationism a long time ago. We would be unable to do things outside of the many trade agreements that we have. Currently, we can't break them. We're in debt, for starters. We owe too much to too many people.
Can we really not break them?
Can we?
Really not break those trade agreements?
Not without consequences. Consequences that we're not prepared to face.
Like, what's the worst?
You really want to go to the worst?
I want to know.
I would not want to go to the worst.
But what would the worst look like for us? Because I'm not well versed in that.
I think that the worst will look like
You have to give up, a gold mine, or you have to give up an oil, rake, or
which will trickle down to the people.
Yeah, of course.
Exchange
So,
rates
as
will
in-
be far higher than they are today, as high as they are.
They will still live in this country.
who?
Whoever we're giving it up to.
Do they live here?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly.
Will they still operate? Like I'm not saying we should go to that. I'm saying that if a authoritarian president comes in and says, I'm cutting off these, basically saying fuck off. I'm not giving up anything. Is that going to start a war? Like, is that going to create?
No, I don't think so.
Worst case scenario, but most likely not.
A war between who?
Like those who own the things, are they going to?
No, they'll more so punish us with sanctions.
Yeah.
And we import far more than we produce.
Than we produce.
So if they cut off the things that we are importing, like rice, which we honestly should not be importing, sugar, and whatever else, we're going to suffer. It's gonna hurt us.
There'll be hunger. There'll be hunger.
Yeah, there'll be hunger.
We'll be hungering in hunger.
We will be suffering
Yeah.
in ways we cannot even fathom.
Your last question though, if you get
I'll ask my last question.
I have two.
And then Mutombo will take us away. So I'm going to cheat and ask you a two-part question. I'm no longer a big fan of the concept of Pan-Africanism. And I'll tell you why, and then you can respond to it, please. And then the question is, as an intellectual yourself and a student of history, have you ever dared to look at your granddad's legacy outside of your bloodline in a critical way to say, what is it that I can critique? And if you have done that, what are some of the critiques you have about his style of governance, policy, whatever the case may be? But shortly, why I'm no longer Pan-Africanist in thought is I just believe that Pan-Africanism, without intending to focus on too many wrong things like Adinkra symbols, it became more of an attire than it became an actionable thing. Whereas like, okay, I'm a Pan-Africanist, put on some kente and everything's kumbaya and we're good. And at least that's how it's felt to me. And I feel like the people who hold on to it in the West, where it's a symbol of pride, where there's no real substance behind pride. Because if I look at Nkrumah and a Pan-Africanist ideology, what I see is self-reliance, competence, going out and doing it yourself. And now all I see is wooden necklaces and symbols and talking crap about skin tones and shit like that. So I'm not with that. I feel like that's just reductive. It's not forward thinking. It's not progressive. And that's why I don't identify. And I also feel like Pan-Africanism has been around as an ideology minimum 70 years. And to take stock of it to say, what are our results? What have we achieved for the black race, for the continent, the people that, laid the foundations of it, the Du Bois, the Nkrumahs, the yada yada. What was their vision and goal, and how far off are we from the vision and goal? And those are the things that I'm assessing about Pan-Africanism, and I feel like it doesn't really speak to my spirit. But over to you.
So as far as critiquing my grandfather, I make a point of not necessarily voicing whatever critiques I may have. And it's very much deliberate. I think that it's very easy for neocolonialist rhetoric to tear down people like Nkrumah and Lumumba or Sankara for their shortcomings. They too were humans. Any world leader at any given moment can be critiqued, and you will find shortcomings.
Yeah.
It goes with the territory. Nobody is perfect. However, I also understand that Nkrumah is so much more than just a former president. He is the first president of Ghana. He was one of the people who fought for our independence. He begun this path of self-reliance that we have strayed from, but are hopefully still heading towards. And any statement made that critiques the work that he did do will be blown out of proportion.
Absolutely. I understand.
And will be used to discredit even the good that he did do. And for that reason, I choose not to make a point of being the one to speak on certain things. Do I say he was not a perfect man? Of course. Nobody is. And yes, as somebody who hopes to be a part of the change in the future or even now, I have to study what he did. I have to study his initiatives. I have to study, parts of his legacy that I think he may have faltered on, whether it was his fault or due to external influences. I also acknowledge the fact that I'm very much biased. One tries to remove themselves as an intellectual, and I can say I have done so with all certainty, but I also know that I too am human. So I will have my biases, whether or not I believe I am taking myself out of it.
I don't even also always necessarily think bias is a bad thing, but go on.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true. It may not necessarily be a bad thing. But I also know that even for the things that I would call shortcomings, I do know that they were in direct response to certain attacks, certain stimuli, a certain desperate need to protect the work that he was doing. Many people point to the detentions as a way to detract his legacy or from his work. And every time I think of that, valid as that point may be, I also think of the numerous assassination attempts.
Of course.
And how somebody with a very clear vision, a vision that he was right in knowing would fall apart, was he not there? Because that's exactly what happened.
Right.
As soon as the illegal military overthrow occurred,
Things fell apart.
Things fell apart. We went on a downward
Okonkwo.
spiral.
Yeah.
So you have to see things from that lens.
Yeah, I mean, just to I know we have to go back. I love that you use that example because that was at some point my critique. And we have to also never take the West's position on what, quote unquote, the words they use, dictatorship, authoritarian, blah, blah, blah.
They mean very different things for us.
Yeah. Being a leader like he was, and especially ruling in Africa, it's a torturous position to be. Your life being threatened every single day, many people will be on edge and probably do worse. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's not, for me, a critique that is valid at all. But now also I have chosen not to criticize at all, because I feel like I feel like he should have a different title in comparison to everything that we've received after him, because he was a man of a clear vision, and there's evidence to the vision being executed, and there's the rest.
Yeah.
So for my two questions.
Oh, I didn't answer the second half of his question,
Okay,
if you
okay,
don't
okay.
mind.
Okay. Good.
As far as not feeling connected to Pan-Africanism, I completely understand that. A lot of the time we turn movements into buzzwords, and we attach symbols to those movements, like kente or the dashiki, or having an afro, or even combining the Pan-Africanist movement with the Black Panthers, and as a means of connecting Black people in the diaspora to that Pan-Africanist movement, which is a beautiful sentiment and should absolutely be the case. But when you reduce such a strong movement to symbols, yes, symbols should be a means of recognition and a means to pass along that movement, but largely it's been reduced to the symbols. Now the symbols are the movement, and the movement itself is non-existent. I was talking earlier about the Sankara play. A few of my uncles attended, and at the end, one of my uncles was a bit upset, and I was wondering why, and he said, well, he remembers back in the day when there was a strong Pan-Africanist movement here in Ghana, when people cared about neocolonialism and undoing much of the neocolonialist rhetoric and how it was affecting us. A play like this being put on would have had hundreds, maybe even thousands of young people in attendance. Nobody cared. Nobody cared.
It's sad.
So people are out here saying, oh, we're Pan-Africanists, we care. But when it comes to attending events,
They don't know what they are saying.
or
Charlie.
symposiums where you would actually learn about the true Pan-Africanist movement, they don't attend.
Forget it.
They've dulled the senses.
They would rather
They are
go
asleep.
to a day party that says, oh, it's a Pan-Africanist
Brunch
party.
parties.
Pan-Africanist
Where everybody's
brunch.
on their phone.
Everybody come in your Ankara
Waffles.
print. Come in your,
Omelets.
you know.
So three-course meal.
I get it.
A la carte. Champagne popping.
My goodness.
Yeah,
So-
this is the life. Toast.
Yeah.
They
so,
don't know. Say the Makidis, the grandkiddies, they can't suffer. It's a serious.
Very,
We are lost.
very, very,
We are lost, Charlie.
very.
We still thank you for coming through.
Thank you so much.
Your
Your questions. Don't
yes,
worry. We'll get them in.
Yes, Charlie. We sang go 20 minutes. So that means
Random up.
two
You have a
hours.
lot of editing to do.
I swear. So, two questions. Let me. Are you working on a film about your grandfather, and because there has been talks about, I've been in circles where we've even discussed, such move, and for so many years it's still not happened. Other people have complained. Pascal even spoke about it. He knows how tough it's going to be, the permissions and all that. But you are very, very close, to those permissions and all that, because you are blood, right? Have you thought of, and if you have, what story do you think you would tell?
I can neither confirm nor deny whether or not there are actual the actual steps being taken to make any kind of media around Nkrumah. What I can say, however, is that of course I would want a film or a show centered around Nkrumah and his legacy. We have numerous Mandela films and portrayals. We've seen Malcolm X. We've seen Martin Luther King Jr. For the presence that Nkrumah was, not only for Ghanaians but for West Africa, for Africa as a whole, for Black people across the diaspora, it is disheartening. It is embarrassing, truly.
Travesty.
It's a travesty to know that we do not have an Nkrumah film or an Nkrumah show. The closest depiction that we have of Nkrumah in modern media is in one episode of The Crown.
Never seen it.
Yeah, The Crown is a good show.
It's
I
a
haven't
it's a
seen it
good
all
show.
of it.
Is it a Ghanaian show?
No,
it's
it's British.
Oh wow.
about the
It's-
British
it's-
monarchy.
It's about the British monarchy. So there's one episode when the Queen comes and Nkrumah's dancing
Yeah.
with her.
That's a
It's-
famous thing that happened, right?
It
When he
is.
was dancing
It
with the
is.
Queen. You've seen those photos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had serious, talks throughout this,
Yes.
discussion, this convo. What do you do for fun? Like, take us into your world. Like,
Oh, this is more daunting than any other question that we've
Yeah.
had here. Yeah, because I find pleasure and joy in many different things. Sometimes having fun for me is curling up with a good book. I love to read. I can't go to sleep without a book. It's like hardwired into me now. If I don't read something, I can't fall asleep. But I like
Charlie, levels you.
I should say, I hate this
Me,
word.
and if he
but
sits, and if he sits, Kev, put the camera on me. And if he sits, the couch inside, like this, maximum 2 minutes, I'm gone.
well,
like
good for you.
snoring,
yeah?
and I'll be on my phone maybe, or I might just be watching TV, and I'll go. I don't think I have ever slept with a book before in my life. Maybe rare. Maybe it's kind of rare. Hey, so you have to read before you sleep.
No, I actually do. My brain does
Hey,
too
Charlie,
much. And
Fred.
if I just try to like lay there and go to sleep, I'll just be thinking about 1,001 different
Yeah.
things. So I think reading helps me to focus on one thing, and it's fun.
Yeah.
Depending on
I
what
was
you're
gonna
reading,
say
it's more interesting.
But I hate that word, but the people on Twitter they will say, the sapiosexuals make wild right now. They will try to collect your number.
Yeah.
Even though I don't really think that's a thing.
Yeah.
But
So just
Other
read.
than that,
Yeah.
sometimes I like to write music, but I also like to go out
You
with my
sing
friends.
well.
How do you know that?
Oh, I know that.
Okay, now I feel like you're like stalking,
Stalking.
me.
I
How
haven't
would you
stalking
know
you.
that? I
Yes,
haven't
fella.
even posted on that.
I have been stalking you for a long
Oh
time.
my goodness. Should I be worried?
no.
Yeah.
Safe stalker.
Okay.
It's actually kind of a crush.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Don't mind me. Yo. Yeah, but you sing quite well. Why haven't you
you.
dropped any singles?
Ooh, oh man, my friends are gonna love this. Yeah, I've been getting. Oh, you should hop in the stew for as long as I can remember. I don't know. My music, much like my writing, is very personal to me. The music scene is, again, abysmal. It's not really about like integrity anymore. I don't know that it ever has been. It's very much about who you know and what label you're attached to and whether or not you fit the aesthetic of what the industry thinks people want to hear right now. And my art has always been about how I feel and where I'm feeling most connected to stylistically. So I don't ever think I'll ever be the kind of artist who's going to be making music to fit in with whatever the times demand, which makes me think that I would be a terrible artist. Unless, of course, people find a way of connecting with the work itself or with
Yeah.
me as an artist. And for that reason, I haven't yet felt moved enough to release anything. But I think I've reached a place where I might be comfortable just putting an album together for myself, even if people end up liking it, great. If they don't,
Maybe we can put it in the movies.
It doesn't matter.
that you
Maybe
produce.
I could do that.
Yeah.
That's very
a good
true.
way to soft
I
push it or launch.
Yeah, soft launch.
Soft launch.
That's very.
That phrase is so funny to me.
Soft launch.
Soft
Hard
launch.
launch.
Oh, yeah, better
Soft launch
soft
the
launch.
relationship.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
You see a hand.
Yeah.
Oh, not a hand.
Yeah.
Charlie.
But yeah, in addition to that, just going out with my friends. I love a good party. I love throwing them. I love going to them. Just dancing the night away is very fun. But when you're doing it with people who you can honestly trust with your life, otherwise I wouldn't want to be there at all. Yeah.
Dope.
Finish.
Charlie, we thank you for traveling with us through, throughout this episode, from the start to the end. Charlie, this conversation has been presidential.
I've enjoyed it very well. Very, very, very well. I mean, it's one
Yeah.
of the best conversations I've had
Yeah.
in a while.
Princess Nkrumah, we thank you for coming through the podcast.
Booyaka. That's my new word, man. I love booyaka now.
Thank you for having me. I've had an incredible time with you.
But Charlie, our challenge to you is, and you even mentioned it at the beginning of this episode, you said how people depict things, like, not to quote you exactly, you said how film make things larger than life.
Yeah.
I feel an American or Americans can take the tiniest human being or the most irrelevant human being and make him a global,
Phenomenon.
through film.
Yes.
They do that so
That's
well.
the power of film.
And Kwame Nkrumah isn't.
Who
Kwame
is
Nkrumah,
already larger than life.
There is no film. It's Fred.
It's
You know how
deliberate.
crazy it be.
No. I think very strongly that it's deliberate because I've been aware of multiple projects that were in development that made it to various stages and were seemingly cut short.
It's serious.
Yeah.
Propaganda.
Kwame Nkrumah.
Possibly.
No film, no Ghanaian film on Kwame Nkrumah. The first president of Ghana.
I promise on my honor, if I make the money, I'll fund it with no
I mean,
interference.
there's an Idi Amin film.
Yeah.
Charlie,
Let that
it
sink
be crazy,
in.
yo.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, from the West, I know it's clear. For them, he's too powerful.
We
Look,
understand why.
Yeah, we understand why.
Yeah.
That one, because you see, Idi Amin, you can denigrate. And there are parts of him that you can literally say, this guy is barbaric.
No, he was.
There are other people that you're like fractured there. But if you were examining the man on his policy and his leadership and his impact, ultimately he becomes a protagonist. He's not an antagonist. He's a hero. And they can't allow you to present that. So that's why we have to take ownership of it.
Yeah. Guys, we thank you for watching this episode with Princess Nkrumah. An amazing human being, because she's
thank
doing so
you.
many different things, so we can't put her in an envelope in a box.
Oh, sorry, guys.
Guys, you guys have to subscribe. You guys have to follow.
Please.
You guys have to share with a
Please.
friend, to share with their mothers and their grandfathers, because we need more, dope people like you too. Check out the podcast. Basically, the If More Let's Divide podcast. Fred,
Yes, sir.
we are through.
Boom, boom.
Record. I'm record. I'm small.
Because